After 18 years, my corporate loyalty was rewarded with a pink slip. They had no idea what was coming next. I still remember the exact moment. The afternoon light filtering through the blinds of that sterile conference room as Amanda Reeves, our newly appointed COO, delivered the news with practiced corporate sympathy. "Mark, after careful consideration, we're eliminating your position as part of our digital transformation initiative," she said, sliding a manila folder across the polished mahogany table. "Your contributions to RiverTech have been valuable, but we're consolidating the engineering division under the new digital solutions team." Frank from HR nodded solemnly beside her, already tapping away at his tablet, probably checking off items from his termination checklist. I was 52 years old and had just been informed that my 18-year career at RiverTech Solutions was over. Just like that. "We've prepared a standard severance package," Frank chimed in without looking up. 3 weeks for every year of service, health coverage through the quarter, and outplacement services. What they expected was shock, anger, perhaps even tears. What they got was a calm nod and a small smile. "I understand," I replied, accepting the folder without opening it. These decisions are never easy. Relief washed over their faces. Another clean termination. Another older employee neatly excised from the payroll without drama. What they didn't know was that I had seen this coming for months. Ever since Jason Mercer had been appointed as our new CEO 8 months ago with his obsession for young, hungry talent and digital native thinking, I'd watched as my contemporaries had been systematically replaced with 20-somethings at half our salaries. I noticed how my meeting invites had dwindled, how my input was increasingly dismissed as traditional thinking. But most importantly, what they didn't know was that I had been planning for this moment with meticulous care. 3 months earlier, I had been working late, troubleshooting an integration issue with HydroLink, the predictive maintenance system I had architected for RiverTech's flagship product line. As the company's lead systems architect, I had developed the algorithm that could predict equipment failures in water treatment facilities with 94% accuracy, a system now used by municipal water departments in over 300 cities across America. I was deep in the code when a notification popped up on my screen. An email mistakenly CC'd to the engineering distribution list. It was from Jason to Amanda and the board. Engineering restructuring Q3. The message outlined plans to refresh the engineering culture by bringing in digital native talent and included a spreadsheet of employees over 45 with their compensation packages, tenure, and, most tellingly, a column labeled transition timeline. My name was highlighted for Q3 with a note, significant institutional knowledge, arrange comprehensive handover before separation. After the initial shock wore off, I closed the email and sat back in my chair. I wasn't surprised, not really. I'd watched too many of my colleagues get similar treatment. But what caught my attention was their fundamental misunderstanding of what I had built. They thought they were buying time with a comprehensive handover. They thought HydroLink was just another company asset that could be documented and transferred. What they didn't understand was that the core algorithm powering HydroLink had evolved significantly from the original version deployed in RiverTech's products. The most advanced features, the ones that had improved prediction accuracy from 78% to 94%, had been developed during weekends and evenings on my personal equipment, using my own resources. I had repeatedly requested patent protection for these innovations. Each time, I was told it was in process or under legal review. Now I understood why. That night, I made a decision. I quietly gathered all my personal development logs, documentation, and code commits. I separated what had been developed on company time from what I had created independently. Then I reached out to an old colleague who had moved to Blue Harbor Systems, RiverTech's biggest competitor. "Jim, I might be coming onto the market soon. Hypothetically speaking, How interested would Blue Harbor be in next-generation predictive maintenance algorithms? His response was immediate. Call me on my personal number. Now, 2 days after my termination meeting, I sat in my home office finishing up the last details with my patent attorney. Everything looks solid, Mark, she said, reviewing the documentation one last time. The development timeline, the use of personal equipment, the logs showing work done outside of company hours. It all clearly establishes that these enhancements are your intellectual property, not RiverTech's. And their claim to the base algorithm? I asked. They own the original version, yes. But your employment agreement specifically excluded innovations developed on your own time with your own resources. These significant improvements are demonstrably separate works. The patent should be granted within weeks with the fast-track processing we've requested. That evening, I met Jim for dinner at a quiet restaurant 30 miles from RiverTech's headquarters. As Blue Harbor CTO, he understood exactly what I had brought to the table. The board has approved everything, he said, sliding a folder across to me. VP of Engineering, significant equity, and exclusive licensing rights for your patent once it's granted. The press release is scheduled for Monday morning. I reviewed the offer carefully. The compensation was generous, but what really mattered was the recognition. My name would be on the technology. My innovations would be acknowledged. One more thing, Jim added. We want a team too. How many would come with you? I thought about the 4 engineers I had personally mentored who had worked alongside me on Hydrolink for years. All of them, if we make the right offer. Jim nodded. Draft up what you think is fair. We'll make it happen. I signed the agreement and raised my glass. To new beginnings. And to RiverTech's very bad week, Jim added with a grin. My last day at RiverTech was uneventful. I dutifully documented all company processes, handed over access credentials, and said goodbye to colleagues. I provided detailed transition notes on the Hydrolink system, specifically the parts developed on company time and resources. Amanda stopped by as I was packing my personal items. I just wanted to make sure everything's clear for your departure, she said, watching me wrap the innovation award I'd received for Hydrolink 2 years earlier. Crystal clear, I replied. These restructuring decisions are never personal, Mark. Jason feels the company needs to embrace a more contemporary approach to engineering. I nodded. Business is business. Will you be taking some time off? She asked, clearly ready to wrap up this uncomfortable conversation. Actually, I start a new position on Monday. Oh, surprise flickered across her face. That was fast. Anything interesting? Very. A leadership role. I'm quite excited about it. She nodded absently and wished me luck, already mentally moving to her next meeting. As I walked out of RiverTech's gleaming headquarters for the final time, I looked back at the building where I'd spent nearly 2 decades of my career. On the top floor, I could see the executive conference room, where in exactly 3 business days, there would likely be an emergency crisis meeting. I smiled and got into my car. Monday morning, I arrived at Blue Harbor Systems headquarters for my first day as Vice President of Engineering. Jim met me in the lobby. The press release went out at 8 a.m., he said, escorting me to my new corner office. Industry newsletters are already picking it up. The announcement had been strategically crafted. Blue Harbor Systems acquires exclusive rights to revolutionary predictive maintenance algorithm. Welcomes creator Mark Anderson as Vice President of Engineering. The release detailed my background, emphasized my role as the sole inventor of the newly patented technology, and outlined how Blue Harbor would be integrating the advanced algorithm into their next generation of water management systems. Most importantly, it clearly stated that any company currently using the technology would need to negotiate licensing agreements with Blue Harbor going forward. By 9:30 a.m., my phone was blowing up with texts from my former team at RiverTech. Total chaos here. What did you do? Wrote Sarah, my lead developer. I texted back, check your personal email. All four of you have offers waiting. At 10:15 a.m., I received an email from Jason Mercer himself. Mark, there appears to be a misunderstanding regarding proprietary technology. Please call me at your earliest convenience to discuss. I forwarded it to Blue Harbor's legal team without response. By noon, the industry was buzzing. RiverTech stock had dropped 8% since the market opened, while Blue Harbor had seen a 10% increase. Water Technology Journal had already requested an interview about the strategic coup that had reshuffled the municipal systems industry. How does it feel? Jim asked, stopping by my office as I prepared for my first meeting with the engineering team. Validating, I replied honestly. 18 years of watching others take credit for my work, of being told I should be grateful just to have a seat at the table, while watching the company pivot to youth culture. And now, finally, recognition. My new executive assistant appeared at the door. Mr. Anderson, your development team is ready in conference room A. Also, RiverTech CEO has called 3 times in the last hour. Please let him know I'm in meetings all day, I replied calmly. Our legal team will reach out to discuss licensing options later this week. As I walked toward my first meeting as VP of Engineering, my phone buzzed with another update from Sarah. Emergency board meeting called. Jason looks like he's having an aneurysm. By the way, we all accept your offer. When can we start? By Tuesday morning, the full impact was becoming clear to everyone at RiverTech. Their flagship HydroLink system relied entirely on my algorithm to deliver the predictive maintenance capabilities that municipal customers had come to depend on. Without licensing rights to my patent, they faced 2 equally unpalatable options: negotiate with Blue Harbor or rebuild their core technology from scratch, a process that would take years and millions in development costs. Jason has called an all-hands meeting for 2 p.m., Sarah texted. It was her last day at RiverTech. She and the rest of my former team would be starting at Blue Harbor the following Monday. Meanwhile, I was settling into my new role with remarkable ease. The respect I received at Blue Harbor was a stark contrast to my final years at RiverTech. When I spoke in meetings, people actually listened. My ideas weren't repackaged by younger colleagues and presented as their own. My experience was viewed as an asset rather than a liability. The engineering team is implementing your efficiency improvements, Jim informed me during our afternoon briefing. Early testing shows a 52% performance boost over the original algorithm. I had several refinements I never shared with RiverTech, I admitted, after I discovered they were planning to eliminate my position. I saw no reason to give them my best work. Their loss, our gain, Jim replied with a satisfied smile. At 3:30 p.m., Sarah sent a detailed account of Jason's all-hands meeting. The CEO had tried to project confidence, assuring the staff that RiverTech would vigorously defend our proprietary technology, but the anxiety in the room had been palpable. Several employees had already updated their LinkedIn profiles, sensing the company's vulnerability. Jason looked like he was about to have a stroke when someone asked directly if they'd failed to secure the patent, Sarah reported. Amanda cut the question period short after that. By Wednesday, the industry fallout had intensified. 3 major municipal clients had contacted Blue Harbor about switching from HydroLink, concerned about RiverTech's ability to maintain the product without the algorithm's creator. Our stock had risen another 6%, while RiverTech's continued its decline. I received a call from Frank in HR, the same man who had processed my termination just days earlier. Mark, he began, his voice carefully professional. I'm calling to discuss the situation with your patent. We believe there may have been a misunderstanding about ownership rights. I don't think there's any misunderstanding, I replied calmly. My employment agreement clearly states that intellectual property developed on my own time, using my own resources, remains mine. The patent documentation confirms exactly that. Jason was hoping you might consider coming in to discuss options. Any discussions would need to go through Blue Harbor's legal department now. I responded. I'm sure they'd be happy to set up a meeting to discuss licensing terms. The silence on the other end spoke volumes. Finally, Frank sighed. I'll pass that along. That afternoon, I led my first formal presentation to Blue Harbor's board of directors, outlining our technology roadmap with my algorithm at its center. As I stood confidently at the head of the table, not hidden in the back as I had been at RiverTech, I caught Jim's approving nod. By Friday, just 1 week after I had walked out of RiverTech for the last time, the company had entered full crisis mode. Their stock had fallen 25% from Monday's opening bell, triggering concerned calls from major investors. Industry analysts were publishing speculative pieces with titles like "Can RiverTech recover from the algorithm crisis?" and "How one strategic blunder may cost a water tech giant everything." Through my industry contacts, I learned that Jason had finally acknowledged the severity of the situation to the board. RiverTech would need to either license my algorithm from Blue Harbor, likely at exorbitant rates that would devastate their profit margins, or undertake a complete rebuild of HydroLink without using any technology covered by my patent. They've started interviewing for a new development team. Sarah informed me during our Friday video call, where we discussed her upcoming transition to Blue Harbor. Jason's claiming they can recreate the functionality in 6 months. I couldn't help but laugh. The original algorithm had taken me 3 years to perfect, and that was with intimate knowledge of the problem space. Exactly, Sarah agreed. Nobody's believing the timeline, especially after your team posted their resignation letters simultaneously. The knowledge drain is massive. That afternoon, RiverTech's attorneys finally reached out to Blue Harbor to open a dialogue about potential licensing arrangements. Our legal team, following the strategy we had developed, responded with terms that were technically fair but strategically painful. 3 times the standard industry licensing rate, plus a public acknowledgement of my role as the technology's inventor. They'll balk at the acknowledgement more than the cost, Jim predicted as we reviewed the response in his office. Jason's ego won't allow him to admit he pushed out the person who created their core technology. Then they'll have to rebuild, I replied. And every day they spend trying to replicate my work is another day we extend our lead in the market. The following Monday morning, 10 days after my unceremonious dismissal, I led the first meeting with my newly assembled engineering team, which included Sarah and the other 3 engineers from RiverTech. The energy in the room was electric as we mapped out the next evolution of my algorithm. This is how development meetings should be, commented Dave, one of my former team members. At RiverTech, we spent half our time explaining basic concepts to executives who wouldn't listen anyway. That's the difference between being valued and being seen as replaceable, I replied. Here, your expertise is recognized. As we wrapped up the productive session, my assistant appeared at the door. Mr. Anderson, there's been a significant development with RiverTech. Their board just announced an emergency leadership change. Jason Mercer is stepping down, effective immediately. The news spread quickly. Within hours, industry publications were reporting that RiverTech's board had lost confidence in Jason's leadership following the patent oversight that threatened the company's flagship product. Amanda was also out, along with the head of legal who had failed to properly secure the patent. That evening, I received an unexpected email from Carolyn Winters, RiverTech's newly appointed interim CEO. Mr. Anderson, congratulations on your new position. I've been brought in to help RiverTech navigate the current situation. I'd like to discuss a fair licensing arrangement for your patented technology. We're prepared to acknowledge your contributions publicly and make appropriate amends for the oversights of previous management. Would you be available to meet next week? I forwarded the email to Jim, adding a simple note. Phase 1 complete. His reply came quickly, beautifully executed. The board is celebrating your first major victory for Blue Harbor. Looks like RiverTech is finally learning an expensive lesson about valuing innovation and innovators. 6 months after my departure from RiverTech, I sat on the stage at the National Water Technology Conference, preparing to deliver the keynote address. The audience was filled with industry leaders, technology journalists, and engineering students, many of whom now knew my story. And now I'm pleased to introduce our keynote speaker, the conference organizer announced. Mark Anderson, Vice President of Engineering at Blue Harbor Systems and creator of the predictive maintenance algorithm that has revolutionized water infrastructure management across America. The applause was substantial as I approached the podium. What a difference a few months could make. Last year, I had attended this same conference as part of the RiverTech delegation, seated in the back while Jason gave a presentation about his company's innovations. Thank you, I began, surveying the attentive faces. Today I want to talk about innovation, ownership, and the importance of properly valuing intellectual contributions regardless of where they come from, or the age of those who make them. My presentation detailed the technical aspects of my algorithm, but also touched on the broader issues of recognition and respect in the technology sector. Without directly mentioning RiverTech, I emphasized the importance of companies protecting their innovators rather than seeing them as replaceable resources based on age or tenure. Afterward, during the reception, several engineers in their 40s and 50s approached me, seeking advice and mentorship. One man, about my age, confided, "Your story changed how I document my work. I started keeping detailed logs of everything I develop on personal time." "Smart," I replied. "Your innovations deserve protection." As the evening concluded, I checked my phone to find an industry news alert. RiverTech had finally announced the licensing agreement with Blue Harbor, acknowledging me by name as the algorithm's creator. Their stock had stabilized, though at a significantly lower valuation than before my departure. 1 year to the day after being told to clean out my desk, I sat in my spacious office at Blue Harbor reviewing our quarterly innovation report. Under my leadership, the company had released 3 groundbreaking products built on my algorithm, capturing significant market share from RiverTech and other competitors. A knock on my door interrupted my analysis. It was Jim, holding a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses. "Happy anniversary," he said, setting the glasses on my desk. "The board asked me to share the news with you personally before the public announcement. Blue Harbor has officially surpassed RiverTech in market valuation for the first time in company history." I smiled, feeling not triumph, but a quiet satisfaction. That's what happens when you value innovation and innovators properly. As Jim poured the champagne, my assistant delivered a sleek envelope. Inside was an invitation to speak at the American Engineering Leadership Summit. The topic, owning your intellectual value, how proper documentation changed an industry. "You've become something of an icon," Jim commented, noticing the invitation. The story of the experienced engineer who wasn't recognized until it was too late has become a cautionary tale in corporate boardrooms across America. Carolyn Winters, who had remained as RiverTech's CEO after the crisis, had implemented sweeping changes in how the company recognized and rewarded innovation. Their new policies on intellectual property protection and inventor recognition were reportedly modeled after the program I had established at Blue Harbor. "It was never about revenge," I said, raising my glass in a toast. "It was about recognition, about showing the industry that innovation isn't anonymous. It comes from real people who deserve real credit, regardless of their age." "To proper recognition," Jim agreed, clinking his glass against mine. As the afternoon sun streamed through my office windows, I reflected on my journey. At 53, I had finally found what had eluded me throughout my career. Not just success, but acknowledgement. My name was now permanently attached to the algorithm that had changed an industry exactly where it belonged. The end.